Good afternoon. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We're live on this Friday ahead of another football weekend. This time it's NFL preseason, but this time next week it'll be week 0 of college football. We got lots of football here on the show to talk about. Previews of week 1 in college football with Bill Bender. Also discussion in the National Football League with our SportsGrid insider, Adam Kaplan. The latest in sports betting with Sam McQuillan, and Lance Meadow weighs in on the upcoming season for the New York Giants. So great show for you here for the next 90 minutes. Hopefully you can stick around for as long as you can. If not, just go back and stream us. Find out more over at sportsgrid.com. We got some big news, though, to start the show, both in sports betting and in college football. So let's start off with this one. As you may know, the state of Missouri could be the only state to legalize sports betting in 2025. It appears that is the case as we close in on the fall. December 1st is when sports betting launches, and the two companies that will be launching first appear to be DraftKings and Circa Sports. They are the untethered online sports betting licenses winners. So essentially, Circa beats out FanDuel in order to get the license, but FanDuel will now enter the Missouri sports betting market through a partnership with either a casino or professional sports franchise. So FanDuel not shut out completely, but that is the key word of untethered. DraftKings, Circa Sports, those will be your two sports betting options, among others, I'm sure, eventually with some tethered, but that will start in December. Meanwhile, the University of Michigan found out their fate for this craziness that happened several years ago with Connor Stallions. You may remember that employee who was on the sidelines, and there was a Netflix documentary. Was he stealing information, stealing signs? Basically, the NCAA has ruled that something happened, but they don't know exactly what because nobody's willing to give up any information. So here is the result of this investigation for several years. Michigan is going to get fined $20 million. Now, obviously, that's a lot of money for them, but it's only a very small portion of what they bring in, let alone in NIL money, as opposed to even boosters in the school. Sharon Moore, the head coach of Michigan, had a self-imposed suspension in 2025, but he's also now going to get another suspension coming in 2026, but it's just going to be for one game, and who knows when that will be. They will figure that out. And also, if Jim Harbaugh wants to get back involved in college football coaching, he basically has to prove that he is worthy, essentially. It's a little complicated, but Michigan doesn't get the hammer dropped on them as some people thought they would. Meanwhile, there's been a lot of discussion as to what you should and should not bet, and with the Little League World Series going on, a very interesting social media post yesterday made by the association that runs the Little League across the country, saying that they condemn people for wanting to bet and placing bets on Little League baseball. Essentially, they're saying, don't do it. I don't know anybody who is doing this, but Little League wanted to get ahead of this thing to say in the future, for those companies who are thinking about posting odds on it, my gosh, let's stay away from that. Kalshi's legal battles in Maryland and Nevada are unfolding with different developments in each state. This is the prediction market business in Maryland. The case is paused as they try to follow the dotted lines here to see where they're going to head as far as staying involved. Nevada has taken a firmer stance, saying that they need more discovery in their case against Kalshi. This contrasts with Maryland's temporarily truce so they can operate there. The prediction markets is going to be the big story as we end the year to see if they're still able to operate here in the United States. Meanwhile, the NFL Players Association placed Heather McPhee, a top lawyer with the union since 2009, on paid leave after multiple employees, including a high-ranking license official, filed complaints of her, accusing her of workplace bullying and insubordination. FBI also investigated the unions about some misplaced money. Nothing yet on that. We'll figure it out soon. We also can't figure out what's going on at starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams. If you believe Sean McVay, then you've believed he was going to practice last week and then on Monday and then on Tuesday. Apparently, Stafford is getting closer to at least a workout. Now, he will not play in this week's preseason game, but Stafford is expected to at least start taking some snaps, if you believe head coach Sean McVay, who says that is happening tomorrow.
He does. Yeah, he's going to work out on Saturday. Hopefully it responds a little bit better, and then I'll have more information for you guys then.
Similar to last weekend?
It is, yes.
Is Matthews, is the activated disc, is it more a functional thing, or is it pain he's dealing with?
You know, I think probably a little bit of both, but it's, we're trying to get our hands around this as well. So I don't really have much more information other than, we're trying some different things that are hopefully going to be in alignment with getting him back out on the field and I'll have updates for you as we go.
All right, more updates. Can't wait for those. Jordan Love had surgery on his left ulnar collateral ligament is what they call it in the left arm. That's like Tommy John surgery, except for the fact that Love throws righty, so he should be okay. He said basically that had this surgery happened in the middle of the season, they may have held off, but given the fact he's got a few weeks to come back and throw with his right hand, Love told reporters yesterday he'll be ready for the start of the season.
So that was part of the debate is, whether you get surgery, whether you don't get surgery. And, if this was in the middle of the season, it probably would have been something that we didn't get the surgery on. But, with it still being early and I'm having time to recover and be fully ready for week one, the recommendation was to get the surgery.
So you went out there and practiced Monday, though?
What was that?
You went out there and practiced Monday.
I did, yeah. So I went out there Monday to kind of feel it out, see how I felt. And that's kind of part of the evaluation process of, if we're going to, before we met with the doctor, decide if, I want to keep playing with it or get the surgery.
Browns rookie running back Quinshon Judkins will not face formal misdemeanor battery charges after an alleged domestic incident in South Florida last month that paves the way for him to return to the Browns practice field. Meanwhile, on the NFL field tonight, we've got 2 preseason games. The Tennessee Titans are -3.5 at the Atlanta Falcons, total 37.5. If you're looking further into why this line is what it is, it looks like Michael Penix Jr. and Kirk Cousins, both quarterbacks of the Falcons, will not play. Tennessee is expected to play most of their starters. Also, Seattle, 3-point favorites tonight, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. And that line represents both teams playing their starters at least a quarter, maybe a half in tonight's game. Total 39.5. That's why the line is a little bit higher there. The Mets' free fall continues. They've now lost 13 of their last 15 games. And last night it was the player that they acquired, Ryan Helsley, blew a 3-2 lead in the 8th. And the Braves topped the Mets 4-3. The Cincinnati Reds are on the doorstep of getting past the Mets in the wild card standings. They could do it as soon as this weekend. Here's new acquisition Ryan Helsley on what went wrong.
Look at some of the struggles recently. What do you point to right now?
Yeah, just leaving 2 good pitches, the pitch to Michael Harris, just right down the middle, breaking ball, and he put a good swing on it. And the pitch to Albies was actually a couple balls below the zone, and he put a kind of weird swing on it, but, ended up a good result. And, just got to try to keep working and try to figure it out.
It seems like you have a problem with the slider. Do you know why there's been a problem?
Just leaving it up. It feels good. The shape's there. Just got to change the sights a little bit, I think, to get it in a better location.
Is there an adjustment for you? In St. Louis, you were pitching mainly the 9th inning. Here you're pitching earlier.
Yeah, just trying to figure out that role and that routine to be ready when my name's called, and I just haven't been good.
How tough was this? Obviously, it was kind of the way you would have had it drawn up with you in the 8th. For the bullpen not to come through after the starter did his job. What's that like for you guys here?
Yeah, for everybody else to do the job and you not to do yours, it sucks. You never want to be that guy and be the reason the team loses. But all the guys did a great job tonight. Offense did a good job. Just wasn't able to pull through.
Phillies lose their 3rd straight game. They lose to Washington 3-2. Max Scherzer with a great start for the Toronto Blue Jays. They cruise toward the postseason. They beat the Chicago Cubs by a final of 2-1. We'll be right back talking college football with Bill Bender.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune in to Game Time Decisions weekdays on SportsGrid.
This is the moment every fan waits for. The countdown's over. The road to kickoff has begun.
Play is here to stay. I'm not going to name names, Kevin.
From win totals to player props, from division races to MVP debates, we've got eyes on every camp and data feeding 24/7, breaking down every angle across the league. Every pick, every edge, every line that matters. SportsGrid. Your road to kickoff starts now.
Did you know sportsbooks tend to draw up tighter bet lines for events that get even more bettors, like championship games or major matchups? My tip? Try betting on less popular sports. You might have a better shot at beating those odds. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid as we bring in Bill Bender. College football begins next week, but the big story in college football today are the sanctions levied against the University of Michigan. And so let's bring in Bill. So, Bill, whenever these happen, I want to put a reminder in people's not living in the moment. Every single time college football levies a punishment against a school, the reaction immediately is, not enough. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way. It happens every single year. It's never enough. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, Sherrone Moore gets another game next year. They were fined a lot of money. Seems like Jim Harbaugh is going to have a hard time getting back to college football. That's from what I read from that also as well. I'm not gonna go on the opposite side and say it was a lot, but I don't think this is nothing, is it?
Well, I think I have a better chance of coaching college football than Jim Harbaugh now with the show cause he was given. We'll see if anybody wants to hire me. But you're right, Craig. It's a hidden punishment of sorts. We fixate on vacating wins and vacating titles, but $20 million is a lot. And the recruiting restrictions, the 25% that they're taking away there, that's a lot. And in a race, as I was pointing out to you on the break, where these are billion-dollar programs and you're trying to keep up and you lose $20 million that could go other places, that's not a drop in the bucket. I mean, maybe some cynics would say, some booster will pay that off, but
right.
It still has to be paid. And, as far as the actual violations, Connor Stallions and Jim Harbaugh will probably never coach in college football again. So while the immediate reaction is not enough, like you said, it always is, I think this is a reasonable punishment. Maybe you could have gave him a 1-year postseason ban, and that would have made everybody angry, which would have meant it was a good punishment.
Yeah, I think the thing also for next year is that it doesn't sound like Michigan's going to be able to say when Sherrone Moore is suspended. I don't know who they open up with next year, but I'm going to guess Michigan Bill probably knew, and they're not going to open up with anybody good. That's going to be their first game of the season, I guess. 9.5 is their win total. I would guess they're going to be in the college football playoff one way or another. They're one of the best 15 teams going into the season in college, although stranger things have happened. Anything on that board you like here? I mean, they're not the favorite to win the Big Ten. That I understand.
And if you think they're going to make the playoff, they've got to go 10-2, meaning they've got to win Ohio State. They'll be an underdog in that game. I think the Buckeyes are due in that one anyway. And that's when Ohio State fans will be truly happy, when they beat Michigan on the field and end a 4-game losing streak. It really comes down to September, Craig. They play at Oklahoma. It's going to be a tough game. It really is. And then they play at Nebraska a couple weeks later. So when you have a freshman quarterback, which they will, in Bryce Underwood, you have to make those plays on the road early in your career into hostile venues. So I still think they look like a 9-3 team with the potential to go 10-2. Remember, they play Washington and USC too. It's not an easy
Right.
schedule. They got to go all the way out to USC this time.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so Labor Day weekend, we can't wait to have Bill on. We're going to have him on twice a week. We'll be able to preview these games a lot more, and we'll know a lot more about Ohio State. This is one game on the board, Bill, that I'm excited to watch, but not to bet. I just literally have no idea. Odds makers are telling us these two teams are dead even when you make Ohio State a 2.5-point favorite at home. We don't know who the quarterback for Ohio State is going to be, and honestly, when he names the quarterback, I'm not even sure I know how that quarterback is going to perform. Should be a great game nonetheless, but this is not one of those that I'm going to plant a flag on coming first week of college football.
Nah, it's hard not to go against Ohio State here. They've lost to 3 non-conference teams at home since the playoff era started, and the common thread in those games, Michael Brewer, way back with Virginia Tech in 2014, played well. Baker Mayfield, that was the one that stood out to me. He came in there and lit Ohio State up with Oklahoma, and then Anthony Brown with Oregon. So Arch Manning's going to have to play well for them to go in there and win. Both teams have a ton of talent. It probably, that line might fluctuate. I bet it drops a little bit, honestly, before kickoff, and it might get down to 1.5. And at that point, you got to take the Buckeyes, in my opinion, at home in an opener where both teams have questions. One big question for Texas, they lost 4 starters on the offensive line. That matters on the road at Ohio State in the first game of the year.
Do you know much about, Bill, these two quarterbacks at Ohio State? Do you think one has an edge over the other?
Well, I think it's going to go right down to the wire, and this isn't a lip service quarterback competition. Julian Sayin gets the ball out quick. He does. He was very good in the spring game. Get it to the receivers, get them out in space. Quick release is what you're always going to hear about him. Lincoln Kienholz put some weight on in the offseason. He looks buff. Runs well. So I do think it's a competition, and it may come down to the wire, and they need to settle on a starter. You saw Jeremiah Smith's comments last week of, when you're practicing with 2 different quarterbacks, it's 2 different releases. So I would anticipate Ohio State settles on a starter probably, hopefully, by next week, even if we don't hear about it.
Ohio State's still the favorite to win the Big Ten. Penn State also supposed to be in the mix. Oregon, and then a little drop off there. Michigan's supposed to be one of the top 15 teams in the country, but probably not to win the conference, but certainly we will see. All right, let's move over, Bill, to Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is getting ready for their showdown, and everyone will be watching. I believe it's the only game that night, Labor Day weekend, on Sunday night. Wow, Notre Dame has Kenny Minchie and C.J. Carr battling it out for their starter. Who do you project wins that?
It's close. Carr, 5-star talent, not a lot of experience. Minchie's been around a little bit longer. He's playing really well in fall camp. So it is a tough decision, and this is the missing piece. And one thing in Notre Dame's favor, it's not a transfer. They've had transfer quarterbacks the last 2 years, and Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard. And I like that they've allowed this guy to grow at home. So whoever it is, I think will have some success, but they need that quarterback to be the missing piece. They've got good receivers. They've got Jeremiah Love. They've got talent on the trenches on both sides. They've got an All-American corner in Leonard Moore, but their season really starts with those first 2 games. They have to beat Miami, and they have to beat Texas A&M. Otherwise, they'll be out of sight, out of mind, and all the years I've been doing this with Craig, you'll be right about the Irish once again.
Well, I was only wrong once last week. The other years I've been right every single time, so I'm going to be a little more careful. Coach is on the hot seat. Brent Venables, Hugh Freeze, Brian Kelly. Bill, do all 3 make it through the season?
I do. I think so. I mean, Brent Venables is the one to watch, especially with that early season game against Michigan. I think Brian Kelly's won enough, and then Hugh Freeze got to get to a bowl game. That's how I would put it.
Bill, I'll see you next week for week 0 of college football. Have a great weekend.
Let's do it.
We'll be right back.
Can't get thrown out like that. You just can't. It's the only thing he's good at is yelling at umpires.
Yeah.
Other than that, he has no feel for the game, no grasp of the game, no idea how to manage a bullpen, no idea how to write up a lineup card. He certainly has no feel for high leverage spots and who to bring in. Devin Williams. There is no There's nothing he does well other than scream and yell at the umpires.
In-game live only on SportsGrid.
Tigers aren't out of first place. They're still in first place, Tom, by 5 games over the Cleveland Guardians. But you see, like, last 10 games, Detroit Tigers 5-5. Last 10 games, Guardians. Winners of 9 of 11 games, winners of 5 straight games. They're only 5 back now than the Kansas City Royals, sitting at 8.5 back. The Detroit Tigers, so much fun this year, but now facing adversity with a month and a half left in the season.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
He is not Derrick Henry. He is not one of those special backs in that sense. A really good one that's been outstanding in fantasy for quite some time. But you can also hear the buzz recently about it being more of a split backfield. And if that's so, then Aaron Jones' value takes a hit, Jordan Mason's value goes up, and there's an opportunity at some point, if Aaron Jones misses time, where you can see Jordan Mason take that backfield over.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Yankees have an 80.7% chance of still making the playoffs. That just tells you that parity is alive and well in Major League Baseball, where mediocre teams can still make the playoffs, and the Yankees are mediocre but have above mediocre talent. So if they can put it together, you still got an 80% chance of playing postseason baseball.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Time to dive around the National Football League. As I mentioned, 2 games tonight in the preseason, and then just about everybody playing this weekend as well. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. Let's begin with the Miami Dolphins, who definitely are going through one of those turbulent times in the preseason. In fact, there was a reporter who called the Dolphins out this past week, saying that the Lions dominated the Dolphins in their joint practices from start to finish. Now, Miami did not have Tyreek Hill or Jaden Waddle and some of their other starters there, but it remains to be seen what is going on with the Dolphins offense. I mean, this is Mike McDaniel's calling card, but he himself said he's not happy where the team is at going into week 2 of the preseason.
And for me, I didn't like practice because there was a lot of negative results tied to things that we've been working on in our process. So, like, I'm cool with contested losses. I'm not cool with busts. I'm cool with, DB making a great play. I'm not cool with a receiver running a wrong route. Those types of things. So, overall, the day was, the environment was what I expected. The tonality and the energy of who we're practicing against was what I expected. And we signed up for this because it's invaluable, August work for, things that we'll continue to have to work on regardless of results in September, but they'll actually count. So it was, I think it was based upon their responses, we'll see how valuable yesterday was, or how much the lessons weren't learned from certain things.
Yeah, real fired up for Dolphins football after watching that. All right, now let's get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin, of course, back as head coach. Some discussion. Maybe he wouldn't be going into the year. Seems to be pretty excited and revamped, and again, adding to the defense and getting Jalen Ramsey in his defensive backfield, although apparently didn't perform very well against Mike Evans this past week, and basically Evans apparently tore him up. But either way, here's Tomlin on the improved defense and bringing Ramsey into the fold this season.
Mike Evans and the threat that he is in the red zone. When you have a lot of capable corners and guys who are kind of alphas who want that matchup against number one kind of wide receiver, what are some of the conversations like in terms of in that room?
There's not a whole lot of conversations. Jalen's going to get it. Some people may hate it, and I love that competitive spirit in the collective, but I think it's already been decided.
One of those people going to
You can name whoever you want to name. You know, competitive young people want the matchup, but it's already been decided.
It kind of feels like these joint practices between these two teams are like spring training baseball, meaning that as soon as we get to the regular season, I don't think we're ever going to go back and talk about anything that happened in these things as it relates to the regular season ever again. I think we're just desperate for some football, and that's why we're doing this. But anyway, Pete Carroll getting ready for the season too. Now, this is a guy, I don't know how many games they're going to win this season with the Raiders, but this is a guy ready to motivate his squad going into the coming season. They just finished up their joint practices with the 49ers and wrapped up their training camp as the Raiders get ready for their season opener. Here's Pete Carroll.
Has to take a deep breath. Really good stuff. I mean, we're blowing them off the football, and they can't make an inch. That didn't quite happen. I know that. But I want to see us execute. We try to treat this just like it's the next opportunity that we have and do stuff right, and that was what we set out to do. We'll find out. You know, I thought on defense the perimeter looked kind of available to them. They do that. They're a great perimeter team. We've not prepared for them at all. You know, we got a day to get a little bit better before the ball game. You a team that's always well coached, and how good of a challenge is that for you to see a team kind of blindly and be able to react? You know, Robert Sala and Gus Bradley's over there, and Kyle has done a great job for years and years. They've got a terrific group, and that's only what we would expect from them. You know, they know what they're doing. They have control of their groups. They have style of play that always shows up. So that means they've got a real philosophy in mind and all that. So that's why this is such quality work for us.
Coming up next, we're going to dive into the latest in legalized sports betting. And speaking of which, big announcement coming from Missouri a short time ago, as Circa Sports has been awarded an untethered license in the state of Missouri, along with DraftKings. So Circa beats out FanDuel for that. FanDuel will still operate in the state, but they'll have to operate it with a casino of some kind, or also a football team of some kind as well. All right, coming up next, we'll get the latest on that with Sam McQuillan. He joins us from Legal Sports Report next.
Can't get thrown out like that. You just can't. It's the only thing he's good at is yelling at umpires.
Yeah.
Other than that, he has no feel for the game, no grasp for the game, no idea how to manage a bullpen, no idea how to write up a lineup card. He certainly has no feel for high leverage spots and who to bring in. Devin Williams. You know, there's nothing he does well other than scream and yell at the umpires.
In-game live only on SportsGrid.
Tigers aren't out of first place. They're still in first place, Tom, by 5 games over the Cleveland Guardians. But you see, like, last 10 games, Detroit Tigers 5-5. Last 10 games, Guardians. Winners of 9 of 11 games, winners of 5 straight games. They're only 5 back now than the Kansas City Royals, sitting at 8.5 back. The Detroit Tigers, so much fun this year, but now facing adversity with a month and a half left in the season.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
He is not Derrick Henry. He is not one of those special backs in that sense. A really good one that's been outstanding in fantasy for quite some time. But you can also hear the buzz recently about it being more of a split backfield. And if that's so, then Aaron Jones' value takes a hit, Jordan Mason's value goes up, and there's an opportunity at some point, if Aaron Jones misses time, where you can see Jordan Mason take that backfield over.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Yankees have an 80.7% chance of still making the playoffs. That just tells you that parity is alive and well in Major League Baseball, where mediocre teams can still make the playoffs, and the Yankees are mediocre but have above mediocre talent. So if they can put it together, you still got an 80% chance of playing postseason baseball.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The big sports betting story of the day comes out of the state of Missouri. You can read all about it over at LegalSportsReport.com. Sam McQuillan is with us, and we got a surprise on this Friday. Sam, welcome back to the show as always. I think that most people just fully assumed that the untethered, and I know we'll need some explanation on that, the untethered sports books in the state, which means they don't have to partner with anybody, they just operate, would be DraftKings and FanDuel, because that's basically the way that it has gone in 90% of the states here in the U.S. But Circa Sports beats out FanDuel for that. And I wonder, Sam, what that means and how that happened.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising, like you mentioned, Craig, that there was these 2 untethered licenses up for grabs, and FanDuel, Circa, and DraftKings were all competing for 2 of the 3. Like you said, everyone assumed that FanDuel, the market leader in sports betting, would get one. Everyone assumed DraftKings would get one. So DraftKings got one, and FanDuel actually missed out to Circa Sports, which is a much smaller sports betting company. They're only active in a handful of states. Their whole model is taking bigger bets and having a higher limit. So while the big dogs of the world, the FanDuels and the DraftKings, focus on, the $5 parlays and, if you're a really good bettor, they might limit you. Circa's whole model is we'll take your action, and it's a much different kind of business where they're working on different margins. But I would say them being awarded a license in Missouri is a big win for the Missouri bettors, the ones who do complain online. I've been winning too many bets and I'm getting limited and the sportsbook doesn't want to take my action. They claim that their average bet size is about $50 versus about $5 to $10 for the other guys. So the big surprise is because it's not as big a company as the others. They, don't make as much revenue, nearly as much revenue as FanDuel or DraftKings, and this leaves FanDuel. They still have the option to join in the state to get a Missouri license, but like you mentioned, now they have to partner with a pro sports team or a casino in the state, which really probably will be no problem for FanDuel. Again, it's a huge company, but it means they're going to have to shell over a little money in order to do so. This is bigger for Circa because it allows this smaller brand to not have to partner with one of those casinos, not have to partner with one of those sports teams, and essentially save money and try to grow their brands. So they made their cases to the Missouri gaming regulators this week. FanDuel talked about, we already have daily fantasy sports in the state. DraftKings did the same thing. They both have, about 100,000 existing customers in Missouri already. So for them, it's very easy to just turn on. So if you're in Missouri, you have to be excited that one of these kind of newer apps that really isn't active in as many states, maybe you've crossed state lines before and already have FanDuel or DraftKings downloaded and already have their bonuses in, but excited to see what Circa does kind of ahead of football season, or rather during football season when Missouri launches, around their promos and bonuses. The founder even acknowledged during the presentation that we're small potatoes compared to these other companies, and I guess that resonated with regulators. It's really cool to see a smaller brand able to kind of have the success like this. And of course, there's other brands on the way as well. You have BetMGM and Bet365 already have licenses, and FanDuel has until the middle of September to secure their license. So they're definitely not going to call it quits on Missouri before they launch sports betting in December, as we know.
Do you think, Sam, would you categorize this as a loss for FanDuel? That's the question.
Yeah, it's really not a major loss for them. It's, I would say, a small pothole bump in the road. It's really make no difference to their bottom line.
Okay, fair enough. Now let's get to the National Basketball Association, Sam, where you guys wrote about one player who talked about the simplicity of rigging NBA props. I mean, this is the last thing that anybody in the NBA wants to see.
Yeah, it's the last thing that anybody in the NBA wants to see, and it's the last thing that you would want to see if you're related to Michael Porter Jr., who makes $38 million a year from the Brooklyn Nets. He's a very big player, but one of the reasons that we talk about him in sports betting is because his brother, Jonte, who was on the Raptors, became famous last year for becoming the first NBA player banned for life for rigging prop bets, for faking injuries and telling bettors, hey, bet on my unders, I'm going to leave the game early with an injury. And of course, Jonte Porter was caught. He's awaiting sentencing. He's facing up to 4 years in prison that federal prosecutors have recommended. But Michael Porter Jr. has been on this kind of podcast run lately where he's been making these strange comments and really speaking his mind. And this week he made a comment on this podcast called One Night with Steiny, where he talked about how easy it is to manipulate props, and all hypothetical instances, of course, but he's talking about, there's guys in the league that they come from nothing and they really don't, they don't view this the same way as a rational person might. they could easily tell their friend, like, hey, bet $10,000 on my unders today. I'm going to leave the game early with injuries. And, that's a very real thing that he acknowledged. So the fact that you have a current NBA player publicly acknowledging it is already a big deal. And then the fact that his brother is literally the only player that got caught doing this and is now facing prison time just adds to it. Of course, Terry Rozier is under investigation for allegedly doing something perhaps like this. Malik Beasley is under investigation for allegedly doing something perhaps like this. And these investigations all start when you have these betting integrity firms that monitor these markets. One of the reasons that sports betting is legalized is so we can track this stuff and make sure that guys aren't doing it. And when they are, we monitor it. So that's why you have these investigations. So it just adds to this conversation that's been growing over the past couple of years, especially around prop bets. You saw college player props were fully banned because of this idea, because of the notion where it's very easy to manipulate these things and quite frankly hard to track it. If you get this information, you could just say it in passing to somebody, and who would really know unless you have, text messages, unless you're foolish enough to leave a paper trail, right, which apparently Jonte Porter did. So it has led to policy pushback as well. The governor of Ohio has actually called to ban all prop bets across all sports. He did that after the Cleveland Guardians pitchers were put under betting investigation for manipulating their prop bets. The state, I don't think, is going to go that far. They could ban like micro-specific bets where you're betting on the next play to be a missed shot or a wild pitch, something like that. So there is some sort of pushback here. I don't think that we would see all player prop bets banned, but the fact that a current player is speaking out about this, I think only adds to the scrutiny around the issue if lawmakers do want to take action and, regulate or restrict these markets in some way.
Finally, let's cap it off here with another big surprise for me, Sam, this year, which is I would say the de-evolution of the illegal sports books in Costa Rica and everywhere else. I never would have guessed, Sam, that the cease and desist would work. I just thought that they would permanently operate outside of the United States. I've thought through a little bit, kind of like thought to myself, I wonder if they're getting something for not operating anymore, and I don't think that is the case here. It's just shocking to me that they could operate illegally and independently, Sam, not just for like 5-10 years, but for like decades, and then one day say, okay, we're done. I'm surprised.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy when you think about how long they've existed and how legal sports betting being around for as long as it has now really hasn't changed the offshore market up until this point. I think a lot of the time, because sports betting, like we're talking on a sports betting show right now, because it's so much more mainstream because of legalization, that's really only helped the offshore market. It's not like people are leaving the offshore market really to go to FanDuel and DraftKings, or it hasn't been as much kind of until now. I think what you're seeing now with this new survey that was put out by the American Gaming Association is that the percentage of handle that is bet on sports that is illegal is down from where it was a couple of years ago. Now, all the money that is bet on sports, 33% of that is done illegally, according to the AGA, which is down from 40% only a few years ago. And like you mentioned, over the past year, states have been really active in restricting access to these websites, sending them cease and desists. And so far, they've really complied. This comes as, everyone has always asked forever for federal prosecutors to get involved, to really put actual guardrails that these companies have to follow in place. That's one of the reasons they put out the survey, to highlight how big the market is. But I would say, yeah, I'm definitely surprised that the percentage of handle it makes up has gone down over the past couple of years. It seems like what states are doing seems to be working so far.
So far, so good. Sam, have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next week on NewsWire. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. You too, Craig.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Lance Meadow doing play-by-play and talking Giants football. You hear him all the time on ESPN Radio. He's going to join us. Coming up next.
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino, but playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour, but online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
He said that was his decision, not a smart baseball play. Like, shut up, Dave. Like, you know what I mean? Like, really. If Ohtani wants to steal third base on his own, let him steal third base on his own, bro. Like, he's Shohei Ohtani. He made the call. He was wrong. He was out. Okay. I wouldn't have called him out for it.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid. This is the moment every fan waits for. The countdown's over. The road to kickoff has begun.
Play is here to stay.
I'm not going to name names, Kevin.
From win totals to player props, from division races to MVP debates, we've got eyes on every camp and data feeding 24/7, breaking down every angle across the league. Every pick, every edge, every line that matters. SportsGrid. Your road to kickoff starts now.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Lance Meadow knows Giants football like nobody else. We thought we would bring him in. He's, of course, done play-by-play for them and pre and post for many, many years and does work for the website as well. And he can weigh in on the practices and what we can expect on the season. So let's bring him in. Lance, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to have you here. And so, look, I think that there's only one way to go for the Giants going into the season. And that's got to be up, you know? It just kind of feels like everyone is so down on them going into the year. I'm trying to find the silver lining here for them. Look, you never know. It's the National Football League. Anything can happen. Washington last year, oh my gosh, they're going to win 5 games. They end up looking like a Super Bowl contender. I know Jane Daniels is not walking through the door in New York, but maybe there's some optimism at the end. You never know.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to spin it, Craig. You know the NFL has a higher turnover rate than any other of the 4 main professional sports leagues. How many teams do we see, right, change over that make the playoffs, that miss the playoffs the previous season? So from that standpoint, optimism is allowed and it's welcome, especially during this time of the year. But the Giants still have plenty of work to do. This is an offense, okay? Let's not push that to the side that has struggled mightily to get near 20 points per game over the last few seasons. And if you just look at league-wide trends, you're not going to be competitive. Forget winning football games if you hover around the 15 to 17 point barometer. So that's the first thing that I'm looking at this season. How much of a step can the offense take? Because the defense struggled last season in stopping the run. They clearly have a lot of weaponry up front with the arrival of Abdul Carter, but you can't expect one facet to rescue this team. So to me, the onus is on the offense, Craig. They have to be able to consistently put points on the board for them to stay in games down the stretch, which was clearly not a factor and not something that came to the forefront at all last season.
Yeah, I think that, really the key for what most people say, Lance, you would know more than me because I don't follow it nearly as closely, would be the guys up front on the Giants defense. The takeaway from the training camps and these joint practices is that's going to be the strength of the Giants, Thibodeau and everybody else up front, getting after the quarterback this season. So that's a good sign because then maybe boring football works for you. You play close games, you attack the back, you kick some field goals, you win some 19-10, you lose some 13-0.
Well, you don't get brownie points or style points, if you want to word it that way, in the National Football League. So if the Giants want to get down and dirty and play ugly, to your point, that style of football can win. We've seen teams in the past do that, where they keep games low scoring, they play the game of field positioning, and maybe their defense is opportunistic and is able to put a touchdown or 2 on the board. Now, the Giants, interestingly, that we're talking about this right now, Craig, struggled to take away the football last season. Now, turnover differential, much like wins and losses, fluctuates from season to season. That has been an emphasis this offseason. Can the Giants take the football away? Can they shorten the field for the offense? If they can do that, and once again, they have the firepower up front to do that. I don't know how reliable that is, but that could go a long way, to your point, in not telling Russell Wilson and company, you have to put 30 points on the board every single week. So that's where the defense, I think, can meet the offense halfway. But they still have a relatively young secondary. Deonte Banks is looking for a bounce-back season. He was their first-round pick a few years ago. He had a sophomore slump. They have some new safeties. So there's pieces of the puzzle here. As good as the pass rush may be, Craig, how reliable can the back of the unit perform where you can manufacture those takeaways?
Yeah, that's a great point, Lance. And so I would ask you this. So I can't really have too much takeaway from Jackson Dart in his first game. But my takeaway all along, honestly, Lance, for years, and I was probably like, I'm wrong about most things, but one thing on this network that years ago that I feel like I was right about was Russell Wilson. You know, you don't just give up Russell Wilson if something's not up. And that proved to be the case when he went to Denver. I got to tell you, Lance, like if Jackson Dart had another good half, I don't know what the guaranteed money is for Russell Wilson, but I mean, if you're Brian Daboll, don't you want to play somebody that gives you hope for the future? I mean, he's got to be thinking about his gig this year. And Lance, I just don't see any scenario where Wilson is the long-term answer, let alone a 16 or 17-week answer this season. That's the part of the Giants I just don't get.
Well, Craig, I would agree with you that Russell Wilson's not a long-term answer. So let's start there. But you brought up an interesting point with respect to if you're Brian Daboll, and I'll throw Joe Shane, the general manager, into the equation, don't you have to think about your job security? It's a fair point, but do you really want to attach your job security, Craig, to a rookie that has no NFL experience after you've gotten off to a lot of slow starts over the last few seasons that have put you in a very precarious spot? Dart has upside. It's a tiny sample size, and I think they look at him as the long-term answer. But the Giants, they're not looking to hit the home run, which is unlikely to happen. They need to play for some singles and doubles, to utilize a little bit of a baseball analogy. And I think Russell Wilson, Craig, helps them get on base a little bit more and play competitively at the start of the season. If things go downhill, they could always bring in Jackson Dart for the last quarter of the season. There's no rule of thumb that prevents that. But to bank everything on a rookie right now, I don't think that helps their job security. And I really don't think that helps the team, at least in the short run.
All right, fair answer. We'll see how things go. Real quick, Lance, let's get to tonight's games. Anything in particular that you think is interesting with these two tonight? I know we're going to get the rest of them this weekend, but Titans-Falcons, it feels like the Falcons are punting this one. Chiefs and Seahawks later tonight. So anything big takeaways here? Feels like all four teams kind of feel like they're set, I guess, going into week 2.
The Seattle Seahawks, that's the team that I'd be focusing on tonight, mainly because we want to see what Sam Darnold can do in a new offense with Clint Kubiak. Remember, you don't have Kevin O'Connell anymore, who's had an excellent track record from an offensive standpoint. So if I'm the Seahawks, I want to see where Darnold's comfort level is. This is year 2 with Mike McDonald, and they were a borderline playoff team last year. But, Craig, you know, Darnold, his track record hasn't been great without Kevin O'Connell. So I want to see where he is right now with Cooper Kupp and some of the other weaponry around him in Seattle. I think that's going to go a long way to see at least what type of an early start do we see out of the Seahawks. And remember, Geno Smith was sacked 50 times last season. You cannot afford to have Darnold go back to what happened in Jets land.
Great to catch up with you, Lance. Thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. You too, Craig. A pleasure coming on.
All right, Lance Meadow here with us. Coming up next, we dive into some Major League Baseball. It's a success for the Milwaukee Brewers, both on and off the field. Our friends at Front Office Sports weigh in on that next.
We all know nothing beats the energy of playing live roulette in a casino, but playing roulette online sure does have its perks. At the casino, you'll average 40 to 50 spins per hour, but online, you're looking at 100 to 150. The more spins, the more chance of wins. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
He said that was his decision, not a smart baseball play. Like, shut up, Dave. Like, you know what I mean? Like, really. If Ohtani wants to steal third base on his own, let him steal third base on his own, bro. Like, he's Shohei Ohtani. He made the call. He was wrong. He was out. Okay. I wouldn't have called him out for him.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid. This is the moment every fan waits for. The countdown's over. The road to kickoff has begun.
Play is here to stay.
I'm not going to name names, Kevin.
From win totals to player props, from division races to MVP debates, we've got eyes on every camp and data feeding 24/7, breaking down every angle across the league. Every pick, every edge, every line that matters. SportsGrid. Your road to kickoff starts now.
Well, they are the hottest team in baseball, the Milwaukee Brewers. They've won 12 straight games, and they can make it 13 tonight in Cincinnati. A ton of success, I can say that right, both on and off the field. Here are our friends at Front Office Sports with the winning style of the Brew Crew.
Front Office Sports media and entertainment reporter and mega Brewers fan, Ryan Glasspiegel. So, Ryan, what is it about the Brewers that have been making them so good over the last few years?
It's a combination of qualitative characteristics like the power of friendship and pocket pancakes and just good chemistry and camaraderie emanating from the manager, Pat Murphy, to really some analytics and looking at undervalued stats in baseball. And it's all coming together for a magical season.
Yeah, and since June 1st, the Brewers have been 45-16. Their .738 winning percentage mirrors that to the 2001 Mariners, but they've been top 3 in batting average, on-base percentage, starting and bullpen ERA. And this is a team that's been 10-2 against the highest payroll teams, the Dodgers and the Mets. As one of the lowest payroll teams across Major League Baseball, how good is this for baseball in a time where we're talking salary cap, that they're showing there are still teams that can reign supreme without having to break the bank?
It's very good. I mean, to your point, they were 25-28. They were 150-1 to win the World Series at a point this year. Now they're 9-1. They were 11-1 to win the division at one point during this season. Now they're -600 or -700. It's been a miraculous turnaround, and I do think it's good for baseball. I think it's good that this isn't a sport where it's one size fits all. I mean, all of the dimensions of the stadiums are different. The roster construction is different. And the Brewers have been able to build this sustainable model. And one of the things that they see as undervalued is speed and defense. They have the most infield hits in the league. They have the most runs scored from second on a single in the league. Now, I think that it was probably forecastable that you could see, okay, they develop good pitching, and that has been a characteristic that they've done for a number of years now, but their hitting has just been remarkable, and I don't think anybody could have seen this type of offensive onslaught coming.
Ryan, we're all familiar with the Moneyball model that Billy Beane has created in Oakland, or at least with the A's at least. Are there similarities to what the Brewers are doing to what Billy Beane did in Oakland, or are there very different teams and very different philosophies here?
I do think there are similarities. I think the speed and look, if you look at Moneyball, it's trying to evaluate what stats are undervalued by teams that have a lot of money to spend. And so Billy Beane noticed that walks were undervalued and on-base percentage and slugging percentage were undervalued. Now that has become the consensus, and everybody knows that you want players with good OPS. But with the Brewers, I think it's speed and defense. As I said, you look up and down their lineup, 8 of their 9 hitters are very fast. And it forces errors in a weird way that I don't know that you can quantify, because their opponents know, hey, we have to make this play perfect or they're going to beat out the play at first base or beat out the play at the plate. And it seems to be getting into their heads. And so it's like a weird category of forced errors that I haven't ever seen in sports in any team, just their opponents making mistakes because they're so worried about the Brewers' speed.
Yeah, and we see across the Brewers roster, I mean, their highest paid players are Christian Yelich, Reese Hoskins making $18 million, $22 million, far less than the top across the league, such as the Juan Sotos and Shohei Ohtani's. This is more than one way to build a World Series title contending team. But for the Brewers, not only are they getting free burgers, but they're showing that they can build depth as well. How important is it, with injuries being such a big part of any sport, that they're able to have a strong roster all the way through, including their farm system in the final
their farm system, Baseball America named it #1 yesterday. Mm-hmm. They still have Jesus Mate and Carlos Pena as 2 of the top prospects in the game, and then they have a number of other pitching and offensive players coming up. And Jackson Chourio, who a few years ago was the #1 prospect, they locked him in on a 10-year deal that's way below the market rate if they had to pay it now. And so they definitely are using very sophisticated methods, and I'm not sure we know what all of them are.
Front Office Sports coming at you 6 p.m. Eastern, exclusively here on SportsGrid. Coming up next, exclusively here on SportsGrid, we have Adam Kaplan, our insider, covering the National Football League. Also, don't forget you can download the SportsGrid app just by taking out your phone and scanning this QR code. It's available for both iOS and Android. We'll be back with Adam Kaplan next.
This is the moment every fan waits for. The countdown's over. The road to kickoff has begun.
Play is here to stay.
I'm not going to name names, Kevin.
From win totals to player props, from division races to MVP debates, we've got eyes on every camp and data feeding 24/7, breaking down every angle across the league. Every pick, every edge, every line that matters. SportsGrid. Your road to kickoff starts now.
He is not Derrick Henry. He is not one of those special backs in that sense. A really good one that's been outstanding in fantasy for quite some time. But you can also hear the buzz recently about it being more of a split backfield. And if that's so, then Aaron Jones' value takes a hit, Jordan Mason's value goes up, and there's an opportunity at some point, if Aaron Jones misses time, where you can see Jordan Mason take that backfield over.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a safe shot, pin high left with a 6-iron. And then this is where JJ enters the fray again and hits this slice 5-iron. That was just, it curved probably a good, 30, 40 feet, almost flies in the hole. And it was just a crazy shot because nobody would ever really try to hit that type of slider.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
An HRR, parlay, a combo that you want to do. I generally prefer away teams and players that hit at the top of the lineup or in the top half, just because you are guaranteed just that extra plate appearance here or there. How many times like throughout the season, I've been like, listen, if this guy gets on, he will have one more at bat in the 9th inning. And if he doesn't get there, he doesn't get there. If you just take them that place higher, they're going to be in a spot to cash that bag.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
We've got our SportsGrid insider, Adam Kaplan, covering the National Football League. Training camps are over. Week 2 of the preseason begins tonight. Let's bring in Adam for a preview of what we can expect and also talk about some of the young upcoming players that Adam saw around the league. Adam, great to have you back here on the show. All right, so let's start with arguably the most exciting player in all of college football last season. His name, Travis Hunter. Played on offense, played on defense. The Jaguars loved him so much, they invested draft picks to move up and get Travis Hunter. And I think that that's the kind of player, Adam, in reality, that the Jacksonville Jaguars needed, right? Like, they need that excitement there. They've always tried to do these little flashy things in the past to excite the fan base and get them to go. But there's a difference between fantasy and reality, isn't there?
There is, and we'll get that in a second. But you just said something in passing which made me kind of laugh. So you talked about how they need excitement. Do you remember Matt Jones, the former Arkansas quarterback?
Of course.
Who went up being overdrafted in the first round, Craig. So what happened at that Senior Bowl, and I was there, he ran right by me. He had unbelievable straight line speed. Now, he unfortunately had some off-the-field problems, but the overdrafted speed where the guy wasn't all that skilled, and he just never made it. Now, the one thing, Craig, though, when you talk to football clubs, they can't worry about what the outside world thinks, media, fans, and all that. It's about what's the best thing to do for the football team. Travis Hunter is one of the best two-way players in college football history. Like, just absolutely phenomenal and exciting, yes. And my sense is they're totally convinced that, at least for this season, it'll work as a corner/receiver, and we'll see what the percentage breakdown is. It's 60-40, 50-50. But the word around the league is it's not sustainable. It's just not. Physically, this is not Ohtani, who pitches every 5th day, right? And obviously bats every day, and it's phenomenal. This is the wear and tear on your body. And I know that Hunter's very smart. He's a academic All-American. That's not the point. The point is, from a physical standpoint, he's never going to hold up long-term doing it. It's fun for this season. Let's all get excited. I hope the Jaguars fans, they've been through enough. They've had a lot of winning in recent years after that craziness of 2017 where they came out of nowhere and almost made the Super Bowl. But in recent years, they've been terrible. But they get an exciting player. But, folks, it's about the long-term. And then you talk about – I know you were talking about fantasy football. And dynasty drafts, as we know, are the big thing. If you play fantasy, that's where you keep most, if not all, your players. I had my annual draft this year, Craig, about a week ago. And guess what? I passed on Hunter at number 4. I took Travion Henderson, who we'll talk about in a minute. Because in keeper leagues where you keep a couple players, 5, 6, or 7, or dynasty leagues where you keep players from year to year, Hunter could be a long-term cornerback. So what value would you have unless you're playing in individual player leagues where defensive players? But guess what? It's about tackles. Cornerbacks don't tackle a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Matt Jones. I mean, Adam, they hired Urban Meyer to be the head coach there. So, like, they are always trying these wild things to gain. I mean, I know you're saying about not caring what the outside interest is. To me, that's what it seems like a lot of times is happening with the Jaguars. But, all right, so let's talk about some of those rookie sleepers. The Patriots certainly – Henderson, I saw some practice video the other day. Somebody dumped the ball off. He ran for 100 yards. I don't know what to make of this stuff. I've seen these guys out in person and talk to some of these executives. So who are the sleeper running backs this season?
Now, again, let me just explain. Sleeper or guys who people are concerned about because of dual backfields. I told people on my old show at SiriusXM with John Hansen, don't worry about David Montgomery with Jahmyr Gibbs. It won't matter. Yeah, he might lose some goal line carries. It's about explosive plays. Travion Henderson, I'm told, was the best pass protecting back for this draft, right? That's going to put him on the field for third downs, on what you just talked about, on check downs, on routes. So he's going to get the football. He's a super smart kid, very competitive. I'm not worried about Ramondre Stevenson. I'm okay with the two-man backfield. Now, 10 years ago, where my thinking for fantasy or 20 years ago wasn't so sophisticated, I don't worry about it. When you've got an explosive back like Henderson, I'm clearly not going to be worried about it. And I got him in my Dynasty League draft. I took him over Hunter. I took him at number 4, and I just breathed a sigh of relief when I got him there at number 4.
Now, Caleb Johnson, I ended up with him. You like him too?
Yeah, I do. And again, this is another dual backfield. But if you're in a dynasty or keeper league, these are about the future. Don't worry so much about this season. Caleb Johnson, I know he's a third-round pick for the Steelers, but he was drafted for the future. Okay, I'm not worried about the other two backs that are there. Kenny Gain will be the back, but I'm not worried about Craig. To me, it's Caleb Johnson will be the power back. You know they want to run the football with Mike Tomlin, and that's coming. Caleb Johnson for the future, absolutely, but just be patient with him.
I've heard a ton of good things about R.J. Harvey already. I don't know who Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is.
All right. Well, just one thing on R.J. Harvey. They have a very crowded backfield. J.K. Dobbins might want it being the starter, but again, folks, it's about the future. They didn't spend a second-round pick for Harvey not to be the starter at some point. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was a seventh-round pick out of Arizona. He transferred from another school. Didn't have a ton of work. Super explosive. He's had a great camp. He's definitely making the team. And remember, Dynasty League prospect. Not about this season. Brian Robinson's their starter. That's not in question. But 26 and beyond, this is a guy. If you've not had your Dynasty League draft, keep the name quiet. Don't tell anyone. Steal him in the middle rounds of your Dynasty League draft and feel good about it.
Yeah, I have had my Dynasty draft, and every time like we do one of these, Adam, on the show, I'm like, I look and I'm like, none of these guys are available. Everybody's taken all of these guys already. So, all right, let's move on.
It's about the future. Go ahead.
No, they're not available. I can't get them. That's it. I have to make a trade. All right, wide receivers and tight ends going into the season. Wide open door for Kyle Williams. Same for Ricky Pearsall. Maybe not as much for some others, but let's dive into who you saw this training camp that you think could make an impact. Again, fantasy, reality. I mean, let's also be clear here. There's props out there every week on FanDuel and DraftKings. You can get ahead of these things.
Yeah, and my point on the running backs before we move to receivers and tight end is not that some of these guys are sleepers, but it's because of the dual backfields. People concerned. I'm here to assuage these concerns. Like, listen, it's not going to be that bad, but again, it's about the future. Let's get to one of my favorite guys who Commander fans love, but he's probably not going to be great for fantasy this year. But over time, Jalen Lane, who's a fourth-round pick out of Virginia Tech, remember with Cliff Kingsbury, Craig, as their play caller. They run a lot of 11 personnel, which is 3 receivers. He's going to be their slot receiver long-term. Super explosive slot receiver. This is a guy you can get late. Kyle Williams, you mentioned. I don't know that he'll play a lot this season. This is for down the line. They love him. This is a guy they targeted for the draft the Patriots did. 2 guys that I love. One I saw this week, Cedric Tillman. You might remember his dad, who played for the Denver Broncos, and Mike Shanahan. He's over 6'3". He's a playmaker. Now, what happened last year, Craig, was he had a concussion that ended the season early. He's going to be their number 1 receiver. I love this kid. Now, you're going to say Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is more of a slot receiver who could play a little bit outside. Cedric Tillman's a better football player than me. That's a big statement. I know people think I'm crazy, and I get it. When you see Jerry Jeudy, he might lead them in receptions, but Cedric Tillman to me is more explosive. He's a guy I'm going to get late in my drafts, and I'm going to be very, very happy. And Dante Thornton, who if you're in a redraft, you're probably not going to draft him until late, but he's going to probably start as your X receiver. That's your number 1 outside receiver. He's very physical. College numbers not very good. He only had 1 year of over 25 catches. That was last year at Tennessee. But Craig, he averaged over 25 yards per catch. This guy's explosive. Super sleeper, Dante Thompson of the Raiders.
So so Thornton, right? Dante Thornton,
yeah,
correct?
I love him. Yeah, no one's talking about it. It's Cedric Tillman.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Cedric Tillman.
Okay, Thornton would play alongside Myers and Bowers. Yep. Is that accurate? Would they be on the field at the same
Bowers
time?
is their tight end. He's a tight end. He's a slot tight end. And Myers is a slot receiver. Dante Thornton is an outside receiver, and Cedric Tillman is an outside receiver. Super sleepers you can get late in your draft.
Yeah, and by the way, Adam, you know what I think is really true when you think about it? Hopefully we're still doing this forever, but let's just say 5 years from now. I don't think that we're using the word sleeper anymore. There really are no sleepers.
I know.
It
is true,
right?
But guys that people are talking about early in their drafts, that's the key, yes.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just so different than when we drafted 20, 30 years ago. Like everybody knows
totally
everything.
I know. You got to go buy a magazine then.
I still saw it the other day when I went to food shop. All right, Adam Kaplan's going to stay with us. We'll preview the NFL preseason games this week next.
This is the moment every fan waits for. The countdown's over. The road to kickoff has begun.
Play is here to stay.
I'm not going to name names, Kevin.
From win totals to player props, from division races to MVP debates, we've got eyes on every camp and data feeding 24/7, breaking down every angle across the league. Every pick, every edge, every line that matters. SportsGrid. Your road to kickoff starts now.
He is not Derrick Henry. He is not one of those special backs in that sense. A really good one that's been outstanding in fantasy for quite some time. But you can also hear the buzz recently about it being more of a split backfield. And if that's so, then Aaron Jones' value takes a hit, Jordan Mason's value goes up, and there's an opportunity at some point if Aaron Jones misses time where you can see Jordan Mason take that backfield over.
Fantasy sports today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a safe shot, pin high left with a 6-iron. And then this is where JJ enters the fray again and hits this like slice 5-iron. That was just, I mean, it curved probably a good, 30, 40 feet, almost flies in the hole. And it was just a crazy shot because nobody would ever really try to hit that type of slider.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
An HRR, parlay, a combo that you want to do. I generally prefer away teams and players that hit at the top of the lineup or in the top half, just because you are guaranteed just that extra plate appearance here or there. How many times, throughout the season, I've been like, listen, if this guy gets on, he will have one more at bat in the 9th inning. And if he doesn't get there, he doesn't get there. If you just take them that place higher, they're going to be in a spot to cash that bag.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire. We got Adam Kaplan again with us to preview the games in the preseason this week. I feel like, some coaches are giving us a little bit of honesty this week as to who's playing, who's not. I felt like last week was completely unclear. I feel like this week we have a little bit of a better idea, but the narrative is really playing out over the last couple of years, Adam, is that if the coaches, you'll have to correct me this, I don't want to be right. It feels like the coaches are saying specific players, if they played well in the joint practices and they've seen enough, then they don't play in the preseason. So does that mean the players that are playing in the preseason games, they want to see more from? Is that equatable there?
The latter is correct. Bill Belichick used to do that with New England. He would pick and choose which players would play. So let me go over the joint practice list. This is the big week for joint practice. I was with the Eagles and Browns. We'll get to that later. The Patriots, Vikings, right? Titans, Falcons. Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals, Broncos, Bucks, Steelers, which I wanted to make yesterday, but I had to be with the Eagles. Cardinals, Broncos, I mentioned. The Giants, Jets, Panthers, Texans, Niners, the Niners, Raiders, which is funny because I used to go to those in Napa when the Niners would come down. Boy, that's a long time ago. And the Bills, Bears. Now, what they'll do is, Craig, on your point, you made a very astute point, is if a coach says, listen, boy, our offense is terrible this week. You can't play everybody. But the guys they thought that didn't perform well, they may play. That might happen. Yes, that's what happens because we'd only have 3 weeks. We don't have 4 weeks anymore unless you play in the Hall of Fame game. So, yeah, that's a real thing. And I could tell you from being with the Browns and Eagles, which we'll get to in a minute, I'd be stunned to see any starters in that game.
So let's do it. Browns, Eagles. Eagles, of course, coming off the Super Bowl, generally whoever wins the Super Bowl doesn't play guys at the beginning because they had the longer season. That's played out thus far. For Philadelphia, for Cleveland, not only was Shedeur Sanders the biggest story, as I was suspected, it was the most watched preseason game in years as well. So this kind of hurts the NFL too to not have Sanders out there, although I'm guessing he wouldn't have played as much as he did the week before, but kind of a shame for me to not be able to see him.
Yeah, same for me, because in fact, I was going to go to Pittsburgh yesterday, and on Wednesday I was going to see the Giants and Jets, but I wanted to see Shedeur Sanders, and 20 minutes into Wednesday's practice, he has an oblique strain, and from baseball, Craig, if you're a baseball pitcher, you're out 6 to 8 weeks with an oblique strain. In football, you can come back much earlier, but you got to be able to throw. So it's too bad. I don't know if even playing week 3 now. I'd be shocked if Joe Flacco's not starting week 1 for the Browns. Dylan Gabriel's coming along a little bit. He's a guy I saw at the Senior Bowl, threw well there. Very small quarterback. He's just come back from an injury. Kenny Pickett just back from his hamstring injury. I talked to Joe Flacco, I think yesterday. Joe has picked up a little tennis over his career. He wanted to start. That's why he's still playing. Knowing Joe, I've known him since 2007, Craig. He was not coming back to the National Football League, particularly to the Browns, where he starred 2 years ago, to lift into the playoffs to be a backup. That's just not his mentality. It's not that he doesn't want to mentor. He'll do the right thing when he sees that it's appropriate. But Joe wants to start, and he still can. And, I mentioned in the first segment, Cedric Tillman, they hooked up. Jerry Judian, those guys hooked up. Their timing was a little bit off on Wednesday. The Browns, to me, though, it's about can their defense carry them to a degree. Myles Garrett, Craig, from covering joint practices for about 20 years, put one of the best single-day performances that I've ever seen on Thursday. It was ridiculous. He drove the Eagles' offensive lineman crazy. He did great in 23, by the way, when they came to Philly. But Myles Garrett has reshaped his body, talking to the Browns over the years. When he first was drafted, #1 overall, he was just an athlete who needed to learn pass rush moves, needed really devote his body to the game, and he's done that. I've never seen such a well-conditioned athlete. He's an unbelievable football player. And Craig, to see it up close, I would hearken it to when I saw Tom Brady go 28 for 28 against the Eagles here many years ago. I mean, when you see something special, I know when you go to see a baseball game, you see a great pitcher, you go, wow. See what Myles Garrett did this week to the Eagles was something else. It was incredible.
So Cleveland is going to go into the season, and they're going to have, I would guess, 4 out of these 5 quarterbacks. They're not going to have 5. So it's Flacco for sure. And then it's some combination of Pickett, Sanders, Gabriel, and Tyler Huntley. Huntley, because he is healthy. Everyone says that Huntley's great if you need him as a backup to fill in. I don't know what they're talking about. I've seen this guy play the last few years. Like, he's really not. No offense to him. And then the other thing that I would ask you, Adam, because I'm not familiar, is Cleveland's offensive line going to be able to block for Joe Flacco? Because if not, in the first 5 weeks, there's going to be a week they're going to lose like 60-0, because that's been the MO. Like, as soon as you get to him, it's over. So I'm fearful of him. If their line is not good enough, he may be the only quarterback that I would say that about.
It's funny you say that, Greg. Yeah, it's funny you say that. So, I mean, Joe used to be a little bit more mobile earlier in his career. He can get out of his own way, but he's not as mobile as he used to be. For many years, the Browns were a top 3 to top 5 offensive line, but here's the problem. Their left tackle, Jedrick Wills, was not. He's come back from an injury. Jack Conklin, the right tackle, has had significant injury problems over his career. He's now 32 years old. We'll see how well he plays this season. He's not the same player he once was. And DeJuan Jones, who's their left tackle, is a giant man at 6'8". He's really a right tackle, so it's a good point you made. Now, they're much better than the interior. I worry about their tackle situation. Remember, Flacco is a right-handed quarterback, and DeJuan Jones will be trying to protect his blind side. That would worry me. That's a good point. Now, they're going to get Judkins was not going to be charged with anything, so he's going to be back soon. That's good news for the Browns. And, by the way, the offense will go through the running game. Trust me on that one. And they're going to play a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 2 tight ends and 2 receivers.
Falcons play tonight, and they're one of the rare teams that basically have said they're not going to play the starter and they're not going to play the backup at quarterback. Adam, my sneaking suspicion is that, and again, I could be wrong, is that they have a trade for Cousins, and like a thief in the night the day before the season, he's going to or else. That's what I believe is going on here. Otherwise, you got to play this guy on the field because you don't have anyone else.
Well,
maybe
the problem
why they're not playing either guy.
Right, but the problem with Cousins is his contract. Yes, there's a need for other teams to upgrade their backup quarterback position, but the problem is the guaranteed money, the cash. The Falcons would have to eat a lot of cash. They keep saying they don't have a number, by the way. That's been very clear to me.
Yeah, but the cap keeps going up, and we hear these things, Adam, about the money, and it always gets worked out.
No, the cash is the problem, not the cap. It's the cash. He's making a ton of money, and the teams don't want to take that on for backup quarterback.
Who are you visiting real quick next week? 20 seconds.
I am, if all works well, the Ravens and Washington, they canceled their joint practice, so I'll have to visit them separately. But 2 of the elite teams that I'm really looking forward to. We'll talk next Friday about it.
Sounds good, Adam. Have a good weekend.
Got it.
We'll wrap it up next.
This is the moment every fan waits for. The countdown's over. The road to kickoff has begun.
Play is here to stay.
I'm not going to name names, Kevin.
From win totals to player props, from division races to MVP debates, we've got eyes on every camp and data feeding 24/7, breaking down every angle across the league. Every pick, every edge, every line that matters. SportsGrid. Your road to kickoff starts now.
He is not Derrick Henry. He is not one of those special backs in that sense. A really good one that's been outstanding in fantasy for quite some time. But you can also hear the buzz recently about it being more of a split backfield. And if that's so, then Aaron Jones' value takes a hit, Jordan Mason's value goes up, and there's an opportunity at some point if Aaron Jones misses time where you can see Jordan Mason take that backfield over.
Fantasy sports today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a safe shot, pin high left with a 6-iron. And then this is where JJ enters the fray again and hits this like slice 5-iron. That was just, I mean, it curved probably a good, 30, 40 feet, almost flies in the hole. And it was just a crazy shot because nobody would ever really try to hit that type of slider.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
An HRR, parlay, a combo that you want to do. I generally prefer away teams and players that hit at the top of the lineup or in the top half, just because you are guaranteed just that extra plate appearance here or there. How many times, throughout the season, I've been like, listen, if this guy gets on, he will have one more at bat in the 9th inning. And if he doesn't get there, he doesn't get there. If you just take them that place higher, they're going to be in a spot to cash that bag.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Quick baseball update. Looks like Atlanta Braves all-star outfielder Ronald Acuna Jr. will come off the injured list and play this weekend. That's the very latest on that. We'll also have a baseball update, an unfortunate update on one of our stories that we're doing, which is a fun story, but the guy got hurt. He's going on the injured list. Unfortunately, we got to do that. Also, imagine facing off with a 12-year-old kid in Little League, and he's throwing 80 miles an hour. That and a whole lot more as we wrap up the show with some last licks. All right, I guess we just can't stop him at this point. Mike Vrabel has just decided that for whatever reason, this season with the New England Patriots is going to start off with him getting hurt in training camp. And he's the coach. All right, second time in less than 2 weeks, Vrabel jumping into a pile, getting into it with some players on his team, other team too, in these joint practices. I don't know, feeling pretty frisky, I guess. Now, again, he was a former player in the NFL and a really good one as well. But does he not remember the last time that he came out of this with a little blood on the side of the face? But I know it's kind of hard to see there. But as you can see, Vrabel did get himself all mixed up again in a joint practice, ended up on the bottom of the pile. And I guess he's just not worried about his health going into the year. I mean, look, I guess I was trying to prove a point or something. I'm not really sure, but mixing it up with guys that are basically as big as him and 30 years younger, probably not going to be my cup of tea. Now, this was supposed to be a really good story today, and it turned out to be bad. There's nothing we can do. Chase Burns. You remember Chase Burns? He was one of the top picks in Major League Baseball's draft. So he's a pitcher. He's on the Cincinnati Reds. He's potentially going to be a superstar. So Topps comes up with this great idea that they're going to put the ping pong ball as to the number that the Reds drafted him at. And that's going to be included in a baseball card. Now, how this has got to be a redemption. I don't understand how this could potentially even be in packs because this ping pong ball is like sticking out. And so it is the first one I've seen of many of Chase Burns. So that's the story I thought we were going to be doing here in Last Licks. And then 5 minutes ago, the Reds announced that Burns has a flexor strain and he's going on the IL. Folks, that's bad. He's probably not going to pitch the rest of the year. It's one of the best young pitchers in baseball. So Hunter Green is coming off the IL for the Reds. That's good news. And I guess Chase Burns is going on the IL. I honestly had no idea that this was going to happen. And here we are at the end of the show. And maybe that card's worth a little bit less going into next year. A flexor strain usually means you're done. You're not pitching for a long time. Okay, so as somebody who can speak to a 12-year-old, my son is now 13, who plays baseball. This is a 12-year-old in the Little League World Series, which is going on right now, and his name is Lin Chin Si. He threw 82 miles an hour on back-to-back pitches for Chinese Taipei in the Little League World Series. Now, let me say that again. That's 82 miles per hour. Now, my son pitches, so I know exactly what the average is for a 12-year-old, and it's somewhere between 55, 60 miles an hour. Anything above that is really good. My son is now 13, probably throws about 60, 61, maybe 62 tops in a game. So that's 20 miles an hour more than somebody in my family who I see every single day. 82 is not something that I personally have ever seen anybody at 12 or 13 throw. I have seen some 70. I think I've seen some 70 when we went to Cooperstown, I'm pretty sure, in that competition around the country. But yeah, 82 is kind of off the charts there for somebody who's 12. So I'm sure he'll get some NIL deal in some, if he comes to the United States, by the way, maybe not. All right. That will do it for the show today. We had a lot to cover on the program today, so let me make sure we get to that. We want to thank Adam Kaplan for spending 25 minutes with us here on the show, going over the National Football League. In addition, our friends on the show were Lance Meadow, who covers the Giants and writes for them as well. He was on the program. And also thanks to Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report and Bill Bender from Sporting News. Those were our guests here on the show today. We've got NFL preseason action tonight, and we'll have it covered for you on In-Game Live and Game Time Decisions. For those of you who bet the preseason, the Atlanta Falcons are back out there tonight against the Tennessee Titans. Titans now up to 3.5-point favorites in Atlanta, total of 37.5. Perhaps the reason why this is because Cam Ward will start and play for Tennessee. Michael Penix Jr. will not play for the Atlanta Falcons. Next weekend, ton of preseason games Saturday, folks. Couple on Sunday, and then there is one on Monday night as well. I'll be back with you folks here at 3 o'clock Eastern for our next edition of Fantasy Sports Today. Thanks again to Luke, and for Frank, I'm Craig. Have a great weekend, everyone.
The moment every fan waits for. The countdown's over. The road to kickoff has begun.
Play is here to stay.
I'm not going to name names, Kevin.
From win totals to player props, from division races to MVP debates, we've got eyes on every camp and data feeding 24/7, breaking down every angle across the league. Every pick, every edge, every line that matters. SportsGrid. Your road to kickoff starts now.
He is not Derrick Henry. He is not one of those special backs in that sense. A really good one that's been outstanding in fantasy for quite some time. But you can also hear the buzz recently about it being more of a split backfield. And if that's so, then Aaron Jones' value takes a hit, Jordan Mason's value goes up, and there's an opportunity at some point, if Aaron Jones misses time, where you can see Jordan Mason take that backfield over.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a safe shot, pin high left with a 6-iron. And then this is where JJ enters the fray again and hits this like slice 5-iron. That was just, I mean, it curved probably a good, 30, 40 feet, almost flies in the hole. And it was just a crazy shot because nobody would ever really try to hit that type of slider.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
An HRR, parlay a combo that you want to do. I generally prefer away teams and players that hit at the top of the lineup or in the top half, just because you are guaranteed just that extra plate appearance here or there. How many times, throughout the season, I've been like, listen, if this guy gets on, he will have one more at bat in the 9th inning, and if he doesn't get there, he doesn't get there. If you just take them that place higher, they're going to be in a spot to cash that bag.
Pro Baseball Today, only on Sports.